Next subsystem is our content capabilities. So this is how we do things like deploying years and war files, custom application content. It's got all the basics. It can do inventory. We can discover all the different library versions you're running in App Server and collect that information. If somebody upgrades the version of Log4j, you'll actually be able to go back in time and see when that happened on a particular app server. You'll be able to see when somebody installed an ear file or a war file. And again, this all works even if you're using other tool sets to do those sorts of things. So if you drop a new ear file, even outside of the context of Jopper, it will still detect that change happened and bring it into the system as an audit. So this is just an example of, in this case, all the libraries that we detect running inside of a particular app server. And then basically, I've been talking about this correlation, but we have this timeline view to allow you to tie it all together. You can see package deployments in here. You can see important log messages. You can see alerts that have fired on metrics or other things. And you can see, operations if I restarted something. You can see that all correlated in one timeline view. It's actually draggable, so you can go back in time. So if you had a problem at any given point, you can go back and say, hey, what happened? Everything was going fine. There it is. Somebody deployed a new package. Somebody changed the configuration. They changed the pool size on that data source. There's your problem. And so real useful to go back and figure out what happened. So that is the basic capabilities of Jopper. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can extend Jopper. So Jopper, I've been mentioning, is very plug-in based and extensible. It's built for extension. All of the system, the capabilities I've showed you so far are all based on plugins. Nothing there's no core types inside of Jopper. And so you have all the full power when you write extensions to Jopper that we had when we used it to build the support for JBoss App Server, etc. So it's a very relatively simple system because what we've done is we've partitioned out the different types of management you might want to do. If you just want to do monitoring, all you have to do is implement the monitoring interface. It's a pretty simple interface, and you can gather statistics and feed that back into our system. As soon as you've done that, you'll get the rich power of our alerting system, correlation, graphing, and historical baseline analysis, all that sort of stuff. You get that all for free just by writing a quick little plugin, so it's a very powerful system. We can also take these plugins, obviously. I've mentioned it's based on the same technology. You can run that plugin either in the Enterprise John system, or you can run it in the embedded system. So if you want to do a little bit of local monitoring or a little local management that's app specific or technology that we don't have support for, you build that plugin once and you can use it in both places. We also have built-in basic abstract plugins. So if you're just trying to do a little monitoring of a database, we've got some database plugins, Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, that are available in the community. But you can also use those plugins to build extension plugins that might want to collect information by running a query on a set of data tables and incorporating that as statistics. So we've got abstract plugins that make it really easy to do that. You basically just provide a query, little metadata, and we can pull all that information back in as statistics. And we have a native system that provides cross-platform capabilities. So you can roll this out on 6 different operating systems. You can get an easy view of everything from CPU usage and swap usage, CPU usage on a specific process. You can get network usage on a specific port and tie that all together. And that stuff works across any platform. So it makes it really easy to write a plugin. You can use that as a library. The model, I've mentioned that we're very inventory focused. The model is basically that we have a hierarchy from the operating system that everything's installed on through different levels. So if we have the platform, which is the operating system, we might have, say, an Apache server running on it. That would be a server. We might have JBoss application server running on it, or a few of them. They would all be servers. And then we might have details underneath that we also want to monitor and manage. So for Apache, we might have virtual hosts. That's a service, that's a fine-grained service. You might have ear files, war files, data sources, everything that we can monitor and manage, and everything you saw in that tree underneath an application server, they're all fine-grained services as well. So the plugin system is how you build this information. It basically works off a metadata model. You define, these are the things I'm adding to the known types of, known inventory types. So if I want to support, say, monitoring a Hudson build server, I can say, all right, I've got a new Hudson plugin. It knows about Hudson, this Hudson server as an inventory type, and it knows that typically under a Hudson server, you'll have a number of defined builds. And those are the two types of resources you've added to inventory. And then and then you can add information about how to discover them, etc., and you're done. That's all it takes to tie together plugins into the inventory. The metadata allows you to tie together those subsystems that I mentioned earlier and say, for a build, these are the things that I want to monitor. I want to have a statistic that's tracking the average build times. I want to have a statistic that tracks whether the last build succeeded or not. And all of those statistics are just metadata, things like what operations I can run. If I want to say, hey, I want to execute a Hudson build on this project right now, I can create that as an operation, implement that as a simple interface in the plugin, and it'll show up in the interface. I can run those across clusters. You get a lot of that power just by writing that metadata, doing a short little amount of plugin work in the component, and you're done. The way that we get the metadata from the plugin is a XML descriptor. We've got a schema for this, and you basically define your resource types. In this case, we've got a server. Again, it's the Hudson server example, and we tie it together with some information about how to find the Hudson server, what URL we'll be talking to, etc. And then we've got projects defined underneath. So that's the example. Once you've got the plugin defined, you've got the metadata defined, the next step is to build the components for the plugins. These plugin components are fairly lightweight. They run embedded in this container model that's built to support and manage those plugins. And we have two types of components. There's the discovery components that can go out and find things, and there are the resource components that actually do the monitoring and management. So discovery component might find and detect a Hudson server by doing a process scan. They can actually use our tool set, so it'll work across any operating system, but they can look for, say, a Java process with this main class and this set of parameters, and it'll figure out what port it's running on, etc. And then you've got a Hudson server discovered. You build a component for the Hudson server. Next, you might say, now I want to find all the builds. In this case, Hudson exposes this type of information over JSON, so we can have a discovery component for all the individual build projects that will go use JSON to discover. With a little bit of work, you can actually get a component, plugin that will actually discover the Hudson server, find all the build projects, automatically configure that, and pull it back into inventory. In this case, another example is just when we're running an operation. We've got structured parameters, we've got structured return types. In this case, what we've got is a Hibernate report where we've gone and talked to the Hibernate statistics MBean over JMX and declared that we want to gather these types of information. In this case, it's actually coming back as a structured format. All you got to do is return that out of your plugin. It's actually a very small plugin. It runs a very small JMX request, transforms it, hands it back to the server, and the server manages storing it and putting it through the system. You can actually run it on a scheduled basis, so you can see different Hibernate statistics over time, and obviously you get a lot of power out of that fairly simple system. So a little bit of information in the community. We've got a lot of different plugins that have been under development, everything from the OS level stuff, collecting information about low-level operating system services, file systems, and network, and etc., but up through typical operating systems platform services like Samba or NFS, network services, databases we have, web servers, you name it. We've got plugins that are, or people that are working on plugins. And again, you can come to the community, work with us on these plugins, work with some of the starter plugins, the abstract plugins, to build more complex plugins, and you get a rich, powerful model for quickly getting a lot of capabilities.